Welcome to the FRCL Weekly Call. We're a group of distribution leads who get together regularly to discuss works in progress, share ideas, and create opportunities for cross-distro collaboration.
All right, it is the 3rd of June. We, FRCL Fedora RHEL CentOS leads, are here to talk about all the things that are going on. And today is kind of open forum, but there were 3 suggested topics. So Kashyap will be here in a minute for RISC-V. So we've got 2 other ones to cover. The second is issue tracking systems. I think there was a general desire to talk about what is going to happen next with Fedora's package issue tracking. As you all know, Fedora is currently using Bugzilla. Fedora is the last user of Bugzilla at Red Hat. Everything else is migrated to Jira or other systems. I think there has been a general expectation that, a tentative expectation that we as in CLE infrastructure will bring up a new Forgio system to track package issues, like independent of the Forge Fedora Project org site. But in discussions in the FRCL chat, some people, I think Neil, who's not here today, said, it's not really very good as an issue tracker. Like, it's fine as a Forge, but not for issue tracking. So we don't have Neil here. Do other people have opinions about this? I have an opinion about this, but I'd love to hear from you all first.
So Neil is double booked, I think, so he might not show up. I would have objections if it's the same like dist-git repo, but if you mentioned it's a separate Forgio instance, right?
I think that's the way we've been talking about it internally.
So basically, just like a single project, and you don't have a problem with issues being filed to the wrong against the wrong component.
Yeah, there's definitely a different use case for tracking issues in a package where we have like 20, 30,000 packages, and tracking project stuff. Like, I think we want 2 separate servers for that in any case.
Okay.
Justin, go ahead.
I have an opinion, but since Michelle said he doesn't see it being a useful thing, I just really want to understand why people think it's a bad idea. I'll share opinion later, but I just want, maybe Michelle, can you expand a little bit just to give some context on why you don't think it's a good fit?
Yeah, I mean, for tracking project-wide issues, I agree, and I think, like Bugzilla is actually a bad fit. I mean, you see, like, there is a Fedora component distribution that's just like a dumping ground for everything. For package-related issues, we have raised this issue multiple times, and there was no good solution last time I checked. The problem is that a lot of issues filed against packages, except, I mean, like, it's great if you're like tracking things you want to do to your own package. But if someone else is filing an issue, it's often assigned to the wrong package, and then there is no easy way in like Forgio or in GitLab to move the issue to the right place while preserving history. Or, if you have like a reference to that issue from another like repo, when you move that thing, like I don't think the reference will follow. It's just not a first-class citizen.
Okay, so migration is a problem. Troy, go ahead.
So you said that we are the last Red Hat user of Bugzilla. Is Bugzilla no more? Is it full of CVEs? Because if we move to Forgio, we will be the only Red Hat user of Forgio, whatever we call that ticketing thing. So what's the difference on using Bugzilla versus moving it over?
That's a good question. So I will provide a link to it after today's call, but we actually had the team that manages Bugzilla for an earlier FRCL call, and they wanted to know things like, how much longer do you need this? What would you like to have happen after things go read-only? That kind of stuff. So it's probably worth doing a refresher on that and seeing. But to make a long story short, the same team that manages Bugzilla also manages Jira, and they would like to stop managing Bugzilla, or incrementally wind it down over the period of time that is necessary for us to do what is necessary. But the long term of it is that is the maintenance of Bugzilla is going to end eventually, and that team's energy is going into managing Jira Cloud. Now, Fedora wants to use Jira Cloud in whole or in part. That's a thing that we could do, but I suspect at least a portion of the Fedora community would not like that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if you could provide the link, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll pull it up after the call and drop it into the chat. Go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, so my thinking is effectively the problem is focused weirdly. There are problems with software and user interaction, and there are problems with packaging where I have packaged my stuff incorrectly, and then there is effectively the new hotness which says, hey, your package is out of date. And I'm traditionally used to thinking of these as three separate things, just because that's how my workflow functions. And so I don't see a great way of mapping that into the 4GO space. My end users who complain that my packages have bad behavior, I want them to search for bugs, but I don't necessarily want them to spend 20 minutes rooting around in my to-do list of packaging nits. That hides user problems against my to-do list. And my to-do list never gets completed. I just add things to it because this is who I am. And so I don't want to mix user has a problem and I need to see if it's my package or if it's upstream, or in with the same things of, oh God, I'm using the wrong macros for this. And yes, it technically works, but it's hideous. And as Justin notes, isn't that the traditional problem of trackers? Yes. All bug trackers inevitably descend into weirdly munged lists of weird things. And so thinking about decommissioning the Fedora Bugzilla, right now I have this really nice separation of concerns for user has a problem and my package is wonky. And finding some way of achieving that in whatever the next iteration is would be nice. I tried to train my people to search for existing bugs, and they get kind of bored after the first page. And so figuring out how to match that impedance is tricky.
Okay. Well, I think we have two different 4GO instances, one for distribution challenges and one for people challenges. That still gives you two separate buckets, but the question is bucket management, I think. Fabio.
I do wanted to speak a bit to what Michelle said about the difficulty of things getting tracked for the wrong things. I do think that problem would kind of go away to some degree if we switch to just a 4GO integrated issue tracking, just because there's actually a link of the thing that you're filing a bug against to what you're looking at. In Bugzilla, those two things are distinct. If you go to Bugzilla and file a bug against something, you don't look at the package. If you go to 4GO and want to file a bug, you need to navigate to the package that you want to file a bug against. And then actually you see if you go to that package, you would see, hey, this is the README of the package. This is a description of what this is. And I think that would actually prevent people from filing bugs against the wrong thing in many cases. And that just doesn't happen in Bugzilla because there's no, hey, this is what the component you're filing this bug against is. So I do think that this wouldn't be as much a problem as people think it would be.
Yeah, but I think part of Michelle's point was that if people do misfile, then moving something is a little less trivial than it is in Bugzilla, where you're just like, oh, wrong component, switch the component, and you're done. That's a thing that we would need to, that's a capability we don't have that we would need to add. But I agree with you that it would probably reduce misfiles if people are actually faced with the project that they go to. But it might also create issues for people who don't know what the component is, like where to even file. So trade-off, right?
That wouldn't be worse than right now, because if people don't know what to file an issue against, then Bugzilla is even worse.
Yeah, true. Lukash.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, like, we are now discussing the FRCL, the cons and pros of it, but are there any alternatives that are in discussion? Like, I believe Jira is out. Bugzilla is also out of the place. So is there something else that has been looked at, or the FRCL is the one we are going with and we are now just discovering like, what will have disadvantages between the FRCL and Bugzilla?
Well, if I take my my moderator hat off and put my CLE manager hat on, I am, as the manager of the team that has a lot of responsibility for Fedora infrastructure, I know that we have a tentative expectation that we're going to end up making a second FRCL instance for package tracking, but that's not the same thing as the community, the council, FESCO agreeing that that is the path forward. And we, in this forum, are not decision makers. We are information sharers. So I think that that is a thing that would be worth talking about at Flock. I know Tomasz is his focus for Flock is going to be on next steps for disk-git migration, and then issue tracking comes immediately after that. So we already have kind of the structure for disk-git decided. We have like proof of concepts coming out. So this is prime time for the community to talk about this and decide what they want to do and how we are going to resource it. I am going to be in a place where I can have my team, because we're already managing FRCL, probably manage this infrastructure as well if it is FRCL. If it's something else, maybe not. Maybe we need to have maybe we need community members to step up or something else. It really kind of depends on the path. But I don't think FRCL is a foregone conclusion. It is simply the case that it is a known quantity that could be used. And for many reasons, it's probably a good idea, but in some cases, it's not as good of an idea. As an example, all of the Red Hatters that maintain RHEL packages that also participate in Fedora, they then have two different workflows that they need to take part in order to maintain their packages in both places. That's not great for them. So solutions to that by having a common system would be ideal, or mirroring would be good, or something else. So not decided yet, but it requires some real deep thinking. Justin, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mentioned at the beginning of the call, or beginning of this topic, I had opinions, and I was thinking someone might bring these points up, but I haven't heard them yet, so I'm going to do my best to try to give this perspective on the issue. But for me, you know, the way that we have done bug tracking in the Linux distribution world is something that's so unique from everything else in the open source space. And look, I wasn't around 30 years ago when all this was starting. I was born when Red Hat Linux 4 was released. And, you know, I came into the open source space way later on than a lot of other folks who have been doing these kinds of workflows for a long time. And it's so different. And I've also been around in other open source communities as well. You know, the GitHub generation, I grew up, you know, doing stuff in my university and how people were getting exposed to open source for the first time. And when people thought, you know, we're thinking GitHub, was open source, so all this to say that the way that we do things is really complicated. And I am a package maintainer, and I cannot remember the last time that I have actually filed a Bugzilla. And then I've had people have to like chase me down because I had a Bugzilla bug opened on my component that, it wasn't until someone set the need info flag, and then I got a daily email every single day. You need to provide info. You need to provide info. I was like, oh shoot, I've got to go and actually look at this. What's going on here? So I think that this opportunity that we know Bugzilla is going away, like there's not a lot of love for that as a platform anymore in terms of maintenance and people taking care of it. So I don't think it's a conversation worth having of like, well, we need to have a Bugzilla one-to-one replacement, right? But I think we have this great opportunity here in front of us where we potentially have a solution where our issues and package feedback can actually be next to the source where the package lives. And that to me is just something that we're talking a lot about breaking people's existing workflows, but think about the people who just aren't even engaging at all right now because it's so obtuse and complicated. And God, when I have had to open stuff on Bugzilla, I'm having to go through docs and like read things and figure out what component, like making sure I'm doing this in the right place. And then someone still comes along later and edits my Bugzilla bug because I did something wrong and I put it in the wrong place. So we could talk about, a third-party solution and having somewhere else for them to live. I think Red Hat's preferred choice would probably be Jira, but I think, the community is probably not going to be very happy about Jira. So, I think this is what Lukash was just asking too, like what other alternates are there out there that we're really thinking about? I can't think of any alternate that justifies the value of splitting out where our issues are from where our packages are. Oh God, please don't say GitLab. I'm going to get triggered. But having like, regardless of what other platforms are out there, having a single platform, that to me is the chef's kiss. Like, wow, we could really have everything be in one place. And like, yes, there's going to be challenges of like what Pat mentioned of like, I'm using it as a to-do list, a to-do tracker, and I don't know if my users are going to find value in that. Well, I mean, welcome to open source, right? I mean, we're all going to have to figure some stuff out there. It's not going to be super, oh gosh, I so many hands. I'll yield here in a second. But like, I just think that's the opportunity that we shouldn't lose sight of, is that we have this ancient piece of infrastructure that's really hard to use, is super specific to our corner of the open source world. And we have this great opportunity with an upstream, we were just talking about, oh, it'd be easier, wish we could move things, like it's easy to move issues and components in Bugzilla. Well, hey, we have a great relationship with the FRCL upstream, and they take our patches and they love to work with us. And like, maybe we could figure out a way to make it better with an upstream. That's not just us. I'll yield.
Carl, go ahead.
All right. I keep adding more notes of stuff to talk about as people talk longer, and I'm like, oh, I can also comment on that. But the main point I want to bring up, the reason I raised my hand was that you could argue any of these systems and what we should use for bug tracking with lots of pros and cons, but there's one fundamental thing that I think is getting overlooked. Issues being in the same place as code is the industry standard. Since GitHub got super popular and popularized the entire notion of forges, having the issues in the same place as code is just fundamental. And doing anything but that adds friction. Sean commented on this in the chat in the sidebar. Having them somewhere else is a friction point. And I don't know how many people on the call here regularly onboard new contributors to Fedora, but I'm kind of tired of apologizing to new contributors about things that are weird and not standard. And we'll never get to zero. There's always going to be, unique things for every project. But this is an easy one to me, that we don't need to have issues in a separate place. We're switching to a Forge that has much better issue tracking than Pagure did. So I think that it is an obvious thing that we should do in my mind. That factors into the sustainability, attracting new contributors, keeping contributors. And another aspect of it is that it makes it harder for, I think Justin mentioned this, it makes it harder for maintainers to ignore. A maintainer can go and work in Pagure right now on Dискit and not even look at Bugzilla, and they probably have a filter set up for their Bugzilla emails, and they're not even aware of bugs that are being filed as they're fixing things. I don't like that. having a tab with like, oh God, I've got 10 open issues right now that I thought I was at 0, puts it in front of their face a lot more common. And the only other thing I had was that, Brendan, you mentioned common systems for headers. I think that's overrated, and it comes down to who are we prioritizing? Do we want to prioritize making things easier, a little bit easier for Red Hat maintainers so they don't have to do things 2 different ways? Or do we want to focus on that sustainability for what the industry standard is and bringing in new contributors? I would prefer the latter.
I think whatever we use, we're going to end up needing automation to smooth out the things we don't get for free. But having a native Git workflow instead of effectively disk CVS with different commands feels like the right path forward. Modernizing contributor workflow is foundationally a thing we can and must do. Michelle.
Yeah, for the record, I'm not trying to keep Bugzilla alive. I'm just flagging that we need to tackle this misfiling issue, whichever system we pick. And yeah, I mean, it's likely going to be Forjo. It will have to be after Forjo. We move to Forjo anyway, because right now, I find that Pagure, the issue tracker in Pagure actually works fine. The problem is that it's very badly optimized, the instance we run, and if you have hundreds of packages, there is no way you can look at your activity dashboard. So you ended up having to rely on emails to find out what issues are filed against your packages anyway. So yeah, I think it should not be an issue with Forjo anyway.
Cool. Jeff?
Yeah, so picking up on something, I think the real opportunity here is figuring out how to make use of the Forge runners to help triage issues, because that is a very unexplored space for this project. As when issues come in, how far can we take runners in Forgio to help triage, reclassify, label, even help bridge the gap with upstreams, so that we can actually have runners to, if we can figure out how to do it, we can actually close some of the comms gaps. I think talked about earlier about, is it a packaging issue? Is it an upstream issue? Whatever, how far can we take the runner automation to help with that? That's something that we just haven't had. Bugzilla doesn't have it. Pagure doesn't have it. And I think it's a new capability that is worth trying to use as far as we can take it.
Couldn't agree more. Cash up.
Sorry, lost Forest stuff tabs. I was just looking, was this discussed on discuss.fedora project or /fedora level to get a pulse of a bit more from a broader range of contributors? Not everyone has to agree, but at least getting a sense of pulse on this without getting too bogged down. As Carl said, we shouldn't discuss this extensively to beat to hell and back. It's very simple. At this time today, 2026, having code and issues together next to each other is the standard industry practice, and we should just move towards that and fix the things like new hotness that we rely on, the release monitoring stuff. Many people have rely on these kind of things. So taking into account these essential things, I don't see a whole lot of good arguments against moving towards the solution.
I can give you one.
Well, it's not to make a counterpoint just for the sake of it, Neil. Okay, I didn't see you here. I thought I could escape you.
Yeah, you're not going to escape me. The biggest one is that we're not a code project.
We're not a what project?
We're not a code project. Fedora is not a code project. We are an integration project, and the things that come across it are wide-ranging, cross-functional, and cross-stakeholder. It is Forge ticket plus code in one place is usually around where you have one person or two people or a small number of tickets, small number of focus, and you don't have the web of impact as part of it. one thing Bugzilla does a really good job of, and a lot of dedicated bug trackers do, is the idea of connecting all those pieces together, and also having, you know, things like global IDs and structured query information. Like, I mean, freaking RHEL doesn't do that, right? Like, RHEL uses Jira. I mean, as awful as Jira is as a system, it still provides you that structured system mechanism that gives you that gives you the ability to understand impact, range, and similarities, all that other stuff. Like, forge trackers aren't really built to do those things. They're not meant for that.
Yeah, I see your point, but at the same time, I think Forger surely should have an API or something to query these things in a structural way, and there are unique IDs. If in RISC-V land, at least simple issue tracker, you add a new repo, and then everything gets a new ID. So ID tracking is there, and I think we don't want to get too bogged down on this. If there are really substantial arguments against it, then we should discuss it on the list/forum to see what's the broader pulse of it is. Steph, go for it. I don't want to, or whoever was next.
No, that was my point. Is you know, it's good. We have a whole bunch of factors that are being discussed here. The question is, how do you get the people that you're leading in Fedora involved in the actual discussion, which shouldn't be taking place here?
Yeah,
this is a place for us to understand, okay, here's what we need to solve together, and then take it back to all of our constituent organizations that we're leading, or people that we're leading, and then have the real discussion there. Otherwise, we got a little too far. But really good topics, ones that I would be excited to see brought up in the actual.
Right. So, Justin, I see your hands up. The reason my hand was up was because first I wanted to call on Steph because he lost his hand for a minute there, but also because we had an extra topic we wanted to cover. And what I'd like to encourage is, Neil, we've spent the last 30 minutes talking about this. If you could go back and read the summary, and then, like, please go into Flock, go into Fedora Devel, go into Discourse, and raise this as a thing worth discussing and get into community consensus on. It's time. It is time, and it's important that we do this in a way that brings the community along, because they are the ones who will be using this thing. Like, it's not like there's an objectively wrong and right answer. It's that we're making trade-offs here, and we get that through Discourse. Okay, so Justin, with that, do you have anything else you need to add, or should we move on?
I was just another thought. We have a wonderful upstream that would probably be happy to work with us on things too. That's all.
Yeah.
We also have that with Bugzilla too. Just because we don't talk to them that much doesn't mean that they're not willing to. Like, it's true for most of the open source projects that we use or have used or will use. Most of them, to some degree, like us. I should think that is important to remember, that, like, we haven't actually managed to piss off the world, despite, you know, some people thinking that has happened.
Right, and Steph, your hand is still up. Is that a vestigial hand?
It is a vestigial hand.
Okay, so the first thing was on the list, and we now have Kashyap on, is RISC-V. So Kashyap, I think you wanted to just kind of provide an update, which kind of is broadly cross-platform or cross-ecosystem for us.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned that because I saw it was mentioned in the previous call. I couldn't make it. So, okay, I think where we are sort of at this point, several things. Most of the rebuilds happen smoothly, but of course they take time because hardware is not as fast as we would like it to be. So the first problem is hardware. Where are we? There's incremental improvements. We had some machines, some SoC system on chips from certain vendors that we've been using in the alternative diskette, Koji, not diskette, yeah. They have also had an alternative diskette, but the alternative Koji server, 10 machines. And we also have a newer, most recently released hardware that is based on the latest ISS spec. So there's incremental noticeable improvements, which we'll present at Flock a bit more detail. So hardware is still evolving a bit slower than we would like it to be. So if you want to see more concretely what I'm talking about, I was doing benchmarks comparing to our current workhorse machine in the RISC-V Koji as builders, which we're using right now to build RISC-V, federal RISC-V, and compare that with the latest RISC-V hardware. It's called K3 from a Chinese vendor called SpaceMit. And yeah, there's noticeable improvement. But of course, the main challenge, the main goal here is head towards RISC-V becoming a primary architecture in Fedora. How do we get there? So that's the end goal. And several things has to be in place. First, we need to have the hardware in Fedora data centers. Right now, all of the Koji builders that we have are all in community maintainers' homes. So that's not a long-term strategy. That's a temporary strategy, but they're all hooked into the Koji hub that's running on fedora-project.org. So it's for trusted community maintainers running these machines for us. So the main goal is to have the hardware in Fedora data center managed alongside the main primary architecture machines as well. So there's work in progress on that. I'll link to a ticket in the notes to that for that topic, and I'm working with Kevin Fenzi and others to sort of evaluate the requirements of them of the Fedora DC to have these machines racked up, and what else requirements they have, hard requirements and soft requirements. So on the hardware side, that. So on the software side, most of the work we're doing is on the matrix channel, and there's challenges, of course, in terms of tool chain bootstrapping. Sometimes it delays the rebuild. So that's where you see RISC-V build being out of sync with the primary architecture. At this point in time, the RISC-V build and the primary architecture builds will be out of sync given the state of affairs, slightly. Fedora 42 was at least one of the exceptions in that both main releases and the primary and secondary architectures went out the same way on the same day. There are improvements we can do to bring that closer. We're working towards that. So don't want to take too much time, but I didn't read the full minutes from last time when someone raised when any specific concerns or things that you want to discuss. That I see a hand raised, Troy.
Yeah, you've been working on the stable releases, and the last time I looked, which was a couple of weeks ago, are you planning on following the rawhide builds, or are you sticking with the stable releases?
At this moment, I think we're just focusing on the main so live rawhide builds. That's the idea. Actually, I was just discussing a little bit ago. We did discuss this also on the public upstream channel about sort of shadowing rawhide to do that more aggressively, tracking them and keep on track. That would be the ideal scenario. But we need to stand up a shadow Koji server, and that's an additional resource effort, human effort that you need to, or human and machine effort with LLMs. So is that trade-off worth it? How much costly is it? These things require careful trade-off analysis. So given the very limited amount of resources we have, so we want to be very careful in terms of how we're using the limited time we have. So it's an open question. We're still thinking. I know there is a shadow Koji script that was used during ARM timeframe. I think Brandon was involved, and I know Brandon was involved at that time in ARM upstreaming. So some of that could be repurposed, some of that code. But again, it needs a careful analysis of how we're going to do it and should we do it. Right now, the scripts we're using, David Abdurrahmanov, one of the lead maintainers in Fedora RISC-V ecosystem, has a bunch of scripts, LLM assisted. They're doing most of the job very well, but we have there's always room for improvement and efficiency gains. So we're trying to figure out where they are. So if you bog down on the shadow Koji server, which is we didn't explore the idea deep enough in the trade-off we need to do. So it needs more fleshing out at this point. So I hope to do that more at Flock, and bring that discussion back to the community. Someone raised a hand, Brandon.
Yeah, that's me. So Troy asked one question, but what I heard from Troy was a bunch of statements in my mind, and it went something like, "Hey, if you aren't tracking rawhide, how are we going to have RISC-V in ELN? Because that's kind of important." So
yeah,
ELN
for
tracks
ELN
rawhide.
content set, yes, on the ELN content set, just a quick top of the head number. There's only 24 or 25 packages that are not part of that from the ELN content set that don't have RISC-V built yet. There's some technical reason for it. I don't know on the top of my head. Marcin HRW, I will not try to pronounce his last name, from the Federal RISC-V community did a quick look. So most of the 99% of the ELN content set is buildable. So I think whatever you're looking for, it's just more about setting them up a chain of consistent builds, but that's a separate one. But most of the ELN content set is buildable. If that's also one of the, well, you're doing part of the work yourself. you know it. Sorry if I'm bringing water to ocean by saying that.
No, that's fine, but it's both ELN and then I'm like, I want to do Rel 11. I assume most people know that I'm doing the Rel 10, not Rel 10, Central Stream 10. I should clarify that, Central Stream 10 versus the Rel 10 team. I also want to do Central Stream 11, and so yes, there was several questions behind my question.
Okay, implied question.
Thank you for answering.
Brandon decoded it for us.
Yeah, because there's what's in ELN, but then down the road there's what's in EPEL, and I would want RISC-V to have a similar package set to any other architecture. That's part of its mainstreamification, and if we are unable to do that because we only have enough builder hardware to track one stable branch, that's a shortage of builder hardware that probably needs more priority than it's gotten.
Right now we got one more
but
builder.
it's a natural.
Yes, go on, Seth.
So I agree. It is an indication then if we can get the builder hardware, that's great. In order to scale up and build at full velocity, then that's a really good indication that perhaps there's enough hardware out there and there's enough people using it and so on in order to put in the effort to build everything at that pace. If we can't get the hardware, then it's a pretty good indication that that's not the case. So I just wanted to turn that around the other way. The hardware is the indication of whether we should go forward with making this part of our core requirement for everyone to be involved with or wait on. And it does have a cost on
Absolutely,
delivery of Fedora.
Yeah, I always make a caveat for this as well. We as software vendors or software community can only do so much. The hardware vendors should also have their ducks in a row. That's always the first point I make. So it's hinged on everything coming together. So we already have the latest one of the, at least as an indication, incremental improvement indication. The latest hardware is RVA23, the most recent ISS spec-based hardware. Some of it is already trickling in. We are figuring out budgets for it. We have earmarked at least some budget for Fedora, and we already shipped one unit to Jason from the Fedora RISC-V community. It's already in the Fedora RISC-V Koji builder. He already hooked it up. His personal machine that he ordered on his own. And we shipped one more because he's one of the maintainers who's maintaining tirelessly these builders as a community effort. So we're really grateful for people like this. So this is like really a tiny pittance of a cost to ship these kind of things. Hardware is trickling into next week. Actually, this Sunday or Monday starts the RISC-V Summit in Europe in Bologna. So I'll be there, and I'll be getting more news from there to Flock right after that. So stay tuned. And builder hardware, there is just enough thing to keep it going, but we can't always just only wait for the ultra server grade hardware and not do our part. So we have to do the readiness work in parallel with what we have, and try to be creative to be maximally ready from a software point of view, and only take the time of rel maintainers, for example, when there is a serious issue that we cannot solve with existing community. So yeah, we're mindful of taking time from maintainers only when they're like rebuild blocking issues, like toolchain issues, glibc, stuff like that. We only reach out to relevant maintainers in a targeted way. So yeah, for now, with a very small team, we're already managing what we're able to manage right now. I want to say something else I forgot.
Is it something about the time, how long it took to build things?
Say that again?
Oh, on that other document, it talked about how long it takes to build things like GCC. Was that part of what you wanted to
they're
say?
all in the numbers there. So GCC, I compared them with both. I'm right now still doing some of the benchmarks for FLA. So GCC, where is it? At the bottom. So GCC on the Sci5, the American vendor P550, takes almost 5 days. And K3, the latest RVA23 hardware, takes about 2 days, 2-ish days. 2 days, 15 hours. So 5 days, 13 hours versus 2 days. It's almost 3x improvement. So that's non-trivial. And similarly for kernel, and I'm still doing some more benchmarks. So QEMU, for example, we use QEMU a lot in Fedora. Fedora QS completely relies heavily on QEMU, although they're not doing rebuilds of QEMU a lot. But QEMU takes an hour on the most current latest hardware, and it takes 6 hours on the workhorse machine that we're using in the RISC-V Koji builder system. So kernel again, on P550, it's 9 hours. P550 being the workhorse, current workhorse, and K3, the latest one, takes about 3-ish hours, 3.5 hours. So these are non-ignorable, I don't know if that's a word, numbers. So this another stepwise increment or a bit more incremental change has to happen to come closer. I heard that the Conflux team has some requirements for build times. The GCC tech lead mentioned it. Actually, I wrote it on the ticket for the formal community initiative ticket that I linked there. But they're under 30 hours or something. I don't know what other numbers they have, and I don't know what justification or how they arrive at these numbers. So I am yet to talk to some of them. Brandon? I'm aware of time to take minutes. Go for it.
Yeah, I just want to call out something that Neil shared in the chat, which is an opinion that I actually share, that we're for the foreseeable future going to be little builder oriented, because like the ideal enterprise hardware that we want is going to be unobtainium for the foreseeable future. I think that's true, and that definitely tracks what we experienced with ARM. And if other aspects of ARM track, what we will discover is that the niche that the architecture fills is not going to look like a standard PC or server rack piece of equipment that just happens to run a different set of opcodes. Its niche is going to show up somewhere else. Like with ARM, we really only saw market penetration once data centers like AWS were making their own and had like a compelling cost advantage. I think this is I think RISC-V is going to be in the same boat, because no one's going to outdo like Intel and AMD at making affordable commodity hardware and like reshape an ecosystem. So
yeah, as I like to remind people, it's only RISC-V is 15 years into this whole thing, about 15 years old. ARM is 42 something years old. So there's a little bit of a gap between them in terms of maturity. And as for the little builders, I agree. There's so I put a link to the hosts we are using, the builders we are using in the Fedora RISC-V Koji system. So it's a mix of these little builders and the max capable machines. So it's a healthy mix, and we have a handful of community maintainers. Actually, most of them are maintained, almost all of them are maintained by community contributors. So that's really great that we have this community willing to do that until we get to the data center machine. So it's kind of very hinged on a very threadbare situation to keep this all going. But yeah, it's going on.
Okay.
7 minutes. I don't want to take. Go on.
I think we're going to be in the fun part for the foreseeable future. So that's nice if you're in engineering. All right, so that was the second topic. The third topic, I don't think we have time to cover it in the next 4 minutes. So that was handling agents running amok. So that is a thing that happened recently in the Fedora space. I think there was a general desire to talk about that. Maybe we cover it next week. Maybe we cover something else next week. I assume we're going to meet next week, but then Flock Travel is going to take over, and the week following we'll definitely not be meeting up. So does anybody have any closing thing, or shall we wrap it up here?
I might just add, for you who are going to be traveling, I hope to see many of you at Flock. And if you aren't going to be there in person, don't forget we are live streaming all the days on Monday and Tuesday. So even if you won't be there in person, you can tune in and see all the hot topics of the day on YouTube.
Nice.
And if you are going to be watching online, you can register for a free streaming pass, and that'll give you all the emails and details you need about where to dial in and how to be in the Matrix room. So even if you're going to be online, don't forget to register with the streaming pass ticket. That's all.
Minus the inverse of Justin's. If you register for an online ticket, that's not an in-person ticket. You will not be able to access the venue and the event with an online ticket. We're at capacity. We have a great wait list. It's going to be the best Flock, even with all those challenges that we've all been facing. But yeah, inverse of Justin, online ticket is a great way to still attend the conference from the comfort of your own home, but it does not grant you access to the actual in-person event.
Important note. Okay. Anybody? Anything else? All right. Thanks for the discussion here. Please go to Flock and have it there too. I'll see y'all later. Bye.
See you folks. Bye.
So.